She was just a maid in a mansion worth hundreds of millions. But what happened next shattered a billionaire's entire world in one terrifying afternoon. The moment billionaire Marcus Wellington saw his elegant mother, the woman who raised him to be ruthless and perfect, drop to her knees before their housekeeper Rose, his heart stopped beating. His mother was begging. Actually begging. And Rose? She stood there with tears streaming down her face, clutching an old photograph that Marcus couldn't quite see. But the words his mother whispered changed everything. "Please forgive me. I'm so sorry for what I did to you." Marcus felt like the marble floor beneath his Italian leather shoes had turned to quicksand. What could his mother, the Regina Wellington, ice queen of New York's elite society, possibly need forgiveness for from their maid? And why did Rose look at him with such heartbreaking pain, like she was staring at a ghost? Let me take you back to where this nightmare really started. Before we dive in, drop your city in the comments. We'd love to know where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story like this. Now, let's continue. 3 weeks earlier, Marcus Wellington strutted through his company's skyscraper like he owned the world. Because technically, he did own a pretty big chunk of it. Wellington Industries controlled half the real estate in Manhattan, and Marcus was its golden prince. At 35, he had everything. Money that could buy small countries, looks that stopped traffic, and confidence that could fill stadiums. But there was something hollow inside him, something missing. He never knew his father. His mother, Regina, told him the man died before Marcus was born, some tragic accident she refused to discuss. Growing up in their massive penthouse, raised by nannies and tutors, Marcus learned early that emotions were weakness. Regina taught him that. "Winners don't cry, Marcus," she'd say coldly whenever young Marcus scraped his knee or felt lonely. "Winners dominate." So that's what he became. A winner, a dominator, and completely, utterly alone. Then Rose arrived. 6 months ago, his mother hired a new housekeeper. Rose Mitchell was 50-something, with kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled and hands that looked like they'd worked hard for decades. She was quiet, efficient, and Marcus barely noticed her at first. Just another staff member in the endless parade of people who served the Wellingtons. But Rose noticed him. She'd watch Marcus with this strange, sad expression whenever he passed through the penthouse. Once he caught her crying while folding his laundry. "Are you okay?" he'd asked, more annoyed than concerned. "I'm fine, Mr. Wellington," she'd whispered, quickly wiping her tears. You remind me of someone I lost." Marcus forgot about it. Rich people's problems were so much more important than a maid's nostalgia, right? Wrong. So devastatingly wrong. The day everything exploded started normally enough. Marcus came home early from a business meeting, exhausted from crushing a competitor in negotiations. He walked into the penthouse and heard voices. Loud voices. Angry voices. His mother, Regina, stood in the living room, her face twisted in fury, and Rose, sweet, quiet Rose, stood facing her with trembling hands clenched into fists. "You can't do this anymore, Regina," Rose said, her voice shaking but determined. "I stayed silent for 35 years, but I can't watch him live his life not knowing the truth." Marcus froze in the doorway. Truth? What truth? Regina's face went white, then red. "You signed a contract, Rose. A legally binding contract. If you say one word, I will destroy you. Do you understand me? I'll make sure you never work again. I'll make sure your family—" "My family?" Rose laughed, but it was the saddest sound Marcus had ever heard. "You took my family, Regina. You took him from me." "Mom!" Marcus finally found his voice. "What is going on?" Both women spun to face him. Regina's expression shifted instantly to her usual cold composure, but her hands were shaking. Rose looked at Marcus with such profound love and agony that it made his stomach twist. Nothing, darling, Regina said smoothly. Rose is upset about her contract terms. We're negotiating. That's not true, Rose's voice cracked. Marcus, I need to tell you something your mother should have told you decades ago. Security! Regina screamed so loudly that Marcus jumped. Within seconds, 2 bodyguards appeared. Escort Ms. Mitchell out. Immediately, she's fired. No! Rose struggled as the guards grabbed her arms. Marcus, please, look at this! She thrust a photograph toward him, but one of the guards knocked it from her hand. It fluttered to the floor. Marcus watched, paralyzed, as Rose was dragged away, sobbing and screaming his name. The penthouse door slammed shut. Silence fell like a heavy blanket. His mother straightened her designer dress and picked up her wine glass with steady hands. Some people simply don't know their place, she said coldly. But Marcus barely heard her. He was staring at the photograph on the floor. He bent down and picked it up with trembling fingers. It was old, faded, the colors washed out. But the image was clear. A young woman, maybe 20 years old, holding a newborn baby. The woman's face was unmistakable even through the decades. It was Rose, younger, happier, glowing with joy as she cradled the infant, and the baby had a birthmark, a distinctive strawberry mark on his left shoulder. Marcus's left shoulder, the exact same birthmark. The world tilted sideways. What is this? His voice came out strangled. Regina's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. She stared at the photograph in Marcus's hand like it was a bomb. Where did you get that? She whispered. Who is Rose? Marcus roared, his carefully controlled billionaire composure shattering. Why does she have a picture of a baby with my birthmark? Why does she have a picture of me? Regina's face crumpled. For the first time in his entire life, Marcus saw his mother, the Ice Queen, the unstoppable force of society, look afraid. Marcus, please sit down. Let me explain. Explain now! The words hung in the air like thunder. Regina's shoulders sagged. Decades of secrets seemed to weigh her down all at once. She walked to the window overlooking Central Park, her back to Marcus, and when she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Rose isn't just your housekeeper, she said. She's your mother. The penthouse started spinning. What? Marcus couldn't breathe, couldn't think. What did you just say? Rose Mitchell is your biological mother, Regina continued, still not looking at him. And I took you from her. The story that poured out of Regina Wellington's mouth over the next hour was so twisted, so cruel, that Marcus felt like he was living in a nightmare. 35 years ago, Regina and her husband Robert were the golden couple of New York society. Beautiful, wealthy, powerful, but they couldn't have children. Years of trying, endless doctors, every treatment available. Nothing worked. Regina's perfect life had one devastating flaw. Then Robert died in a car accident, and Regina's world collapsed. Without an heir, Robert's family would inherit everything, the company, the fortune, the legacy. Everything Regina had built her life around would vanish. She needed a baby, fast. Enter Rose Mitchell, young, pregnant, and desperate. Rose was a college student who'd gotten pregnant by her boyfriend, a boyfriend who abandoned her the moment he found out. Rose was alone, terrified, and broke. She was considering adoption. Regina saw an opportunity. She approached Rose with a proposition that sounded like salvation. Regina would pay for everything. Rose's medical care, her education, a trust fund for her future, if Rose would give Regina the baby after birth. It would be presented as a private adoption, quick, clean, legal. Rose, drowning in fear and poverty, agreed. But Regina had no intention of following through on her promises. The moment Marcus was born, Regina's lawyers appeared with documents, real adoption papers that terminated Rose's parental rights completely. Papers that included ironclad non-disclosure agreements with devastating penalties, papers that gave Regina total control. Rose, exhausted from labor and overwhelmed, signed without reading carefully. By the time she realized what she'd done, that she'd permanently given up her baby, that Regina had tricked her, that there was no money for her education or trust fund, it was too late. The lawyers made it clear, if Rose ever tried to contact Marcus or reveal the truth, Regina would sue her into oblivion. Rose would lose everything and end up in legal hell. So Rose disappeared. For 35 years, she lived with the agony of losing her son, watching from afar as Marcus grew up in magazines and newspapers, knowing he thought she'd abandoned him, knowing his mother was actually the woman who'd stolen him. Then 6 months ago, Regina made a catastrophic mistake. She hired Rose as a housekeeper. Why? Marcus would later learn it was Regina's twisted way of maintaining control, keeping Rose close, reminding her of her powerlessness, of who held all the cards. Regina enjoyed the cruelty, but she underestimated a mother's love. Rose took the job not for the money. She took it to be near her son, to see him every day, to fold his clothes and cook his meals and pretend even for a moment that she was the mother she should have been. And finally, she couldn't bear the silence anymore. "You're lying," Marcus whispered when Regina finished her confession. His whole body was shaking. "This is insane. You're lying." "I wish I was," Regina said quietly. "But it's all true. Every word." Marcus felt like his chest was being crushed. Everything he believed about his life was a lie. His mother wasn't his mother. His father's death wasn't what ended his family. His family never existed. He was stolen, bought, a transaction. And Rose was his real mother. The woman who'd been cleaning his bathroom and washing his dishes was his mother. And he'd barely spoken to her, barely acknowledged her existence. "Where is she?" Marcus demanded. "Where's Rose?" "I don't know. The security team escorted her out." Marcus was already running. He burst out of the penthouse, ignoring the elevator, taking the stairs 3 at a time, 43 floors down. His lungs burned, but he didn't care. He had to find her. He had to find his mother. He exploded into the lobby. "Rose Mitchell! The woman who was just escorted out! Where did she go?" The security guard looked nervous. "Mr. Wellington, she left about 20 minutes ago. We put her in a taxi." "What address?" "Sir, I don't—" Marcus grabbed the guard's tablet and pulled up the security logs. There, Rose's home address from her employment file, a small apartment in Queens. He ran into the street and flagged down the first taxi he saw, shoving $100 bills at the confused driver. "Queens, now, as fast as you can possibly drive." The 40-minute drive felt like 40 years. Marcus stared at the photograph the entire time. Rose holding him as a baby. The joy in her young face, the love. How many nights had she cried for him? How many birthdays had she mourned alone? How many times had she watched him on television? Seeing her son living in luxury while she struggled? And he'd never known. The taxi screeched to a stop outside a worn apartment building. Marcus threw more money at the driver and ran inside, taking the steps 2 at a time to the 3rd floor. Apartment 3C. He knocked, then pounded. "Rose! Rose, please, it's Marcus!" The door opened slowly. Rose stood there, her eyes red and swollen from crying. When she saw Marcus, her face crumpled. "Marcus," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Seeing you every day, wanting so desperately to hold you, to tell you—" Marcus didn't let her finish. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into the fiercest hug of his life. Rose gasped, then broke down completely, sobbing into his shoulder as she clutched him back. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry I gave you up. I was so young and scared, and she promised me everything would be okay." "Stop," Marcus said, his own tears flowing freely now. Stop apologizing. You didn't abandon me. She stole me. You're the victim here. You're my mother." Rose pulled back slightly, searching his face with wonder and disbelief. You believe me?" "I saw the photograph. I heard Regina's confession, and His voice broke. "I see it in your eyes, the way you've looked at me all these months. I was too blind to understand, but I see it now. You love me." "Oh God, yes," Rose sobbed. "I've loved you every single day, every single moment, even when you didn't know I existed, even when I couldn't tell you. You're my son." "You've always been my son." They held each other and cried. 35 years of lost time, lost moments, lost love pouring out in that tiny apartment in Queens. A billionaire and a housekeeper, a son and his mother. Finally together. The weeks that followed were chaos. Marcus hired the best lawyers in the country to investigate what Regina had done. The more they uncovered, the worse it got. Regina's adoption was technically legal, but it was built on fraud, coercion, and deception. She'd manipulated a desperate young woman and used her wealth and power to cover it up for decades. The media went absolutely insane when the story leaked. "Billionaire discovers real mother was his housekeeper," screamed every headline. Camera crews camped outside Rose's apartment and Regina's penthouse. The scandal was nuclear. Regina tried to fight it at first. Her lawyers filed countersuits claiming Rose was trying to extort money, that the adoption was legitimate. But Marcus had all the evidence. Rose's original contract showing Regina's broken promises, testimony from doctors and nurses who'd witnessed Regina's manipulation, even old emails from Regina's lawyers discussing how to neutralize Rose if she ever became a problem. The Wellington family empire started cracking. Investors pulled out. Board members resigned. Regina's perfect facade crumbled. But Marcus didn't care about any of that. He spent every day with Rose, learning about her life, sharing his own, trying to build the relationship they should have had. Rose told him about his biological father, a young man named David who'd panicked and run when she got pregnant, who she'd never heard from again. She told him about the dreams she'd had for their life together, the songs she'd sung to her pregnant belly, the tiny blanket she'd knitted for him that Regina's lawyers had thrown away. Marcus told her about his lonely childhood, about Regina's coldness, about the emptiness he'd always felt. He told her about the dreams where he'd imagined having a mother who actually loved him. "I did love you," Rose said tearfully. "I never stopped. I never will." And slowly, painfully, beautifully, they became a family. The final confrontation came 3 months later. Regina called Marcus and asked to meet. Not at the penthouse. She'd lost that in the legal battles. At a small coffee shop in Brooklyn. Neutral ground. Marcus almost didn't go, but Rose encouraged him. "She's still the woman who raised you," Rose said gently. "You need closure." So Marcus met Regina at the coffee shop. She looked broken. The Ice Queen had melted. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple dress. Her perfectly styled hair was loose. Her hands trembled as she held her coffee cup. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. Marcus said nothing. "I wanted to apologize," Regina continued. "For everything. I know it doesn't change anything. I know what I did was monstrous. But I need you to know that I did love you. In my own twisted way, I loved you." "You loved controlling me," Marcus said coldly. "You loved having a perfect son to show off at parties. That's not love." Regina flinched but nodded. "You're right. I turned you into a trophy, a possession. I never let you be a real person with real feelings." Tears filled her eyes. "I did to you what my parents did to me. I became the monster I swore I'd never be." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Not forgiveness. He wasn't ready for that. But understanding. Rose suggested therapy, he said after a long silence. For both of us. Separately, obviously. She thinks you need help. Regina's head snapped up. Rose suggested that? After everything I did to her? She's a better person than either of us, Marcus said. She's my mother, the real one, and she's teaching me what love actually means. More tears streamed down Regina's face. I've lost everything, Marcus. The company, the money, the reputation. But losing you? That's what actually hurts. You never had me, Marcus said, but his voice was softer now. You had a possession. Now I'm free. Now I can figure out who I actually am, not the robot you programmed, not the perfect heir, just Marcus, Rose's son. He stood to leave. Marcus, Regina called out desperately, will you ever forgive me? He looked back at her. This woman who'd shaped his entire life through manipulation and lies. This woman who'd stolen him from his real mother. This woman who was now facing the consequences of her own cruelty. I don't know, he said honestly. Maybe someday, but right now I need to focus on building a relationship with my actual mother. The one who loved me enough to let me go because she thought it was best for me. That's real love, Regina. Maybe you should learn what that means. He walked out, leaving Regina alone with her coffee and her regrets. 6 months later, Marcus and Rose stood together at the grand opening of the Rose Mitchell Community Center, a massive facility in Queens dedicated to helping young mothers in crisis. Marcus had used his personal fortune to build it, and Rose had designed every program. For young women who need support, not manipulation, Rose had said. So no mother ever has to make the choice I made. As Marcus cut the ribbon, surrounded by reporters and cameras, he looked at Rose and saw pride shining in her eyes. Not pride in his money or his success, pride in the man he was becoming, a man who chose compassion over cruelty, a man who valued love over power, a man who knew the difference between a mother and a kidnapper. That night, Marcus and Rose had dinner together at her apartment. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and meatballs, Rose's specialty. They talked and laughed and cried and hugged. And for the first time in his 35 years, Marcus Wellington felt like he was home. Not in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, not in a mansion worth $1 million, but in a small apartment in Queens with his real mother, eating simple food and sharing simple love. The family secret had been dark and devastating, but its unfolding brought something neither Marcus nor Rose ever expected. Freedom, truth, and finally, the chance to be the family they were always meant to be. What would you do if you discovered your entire life was built on a lie? Would you forgive the person who stole your childhood, or would you walk away forever? And could you rebuild a relationship with a parent you never knew existed? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this story proves that sometimes the darkest secrets lead to the brightest new beginnings. And if you loved this emotional roller coaster of betrayal, redemption, and a mother's unbreakable love, subscribe to Emotional Stories for more heart-wrenching tales that will make you feel everything. Hit that bell icon so you never miss a story that'll have you crying, cheering, and questioning everything you thought you knew about family. Because at the end of the day, real family isn't about blood contracts or $1 million penthouses. Real family is about the people who love you unconditionally, even when the whole world tries to tear you apart.